I know this is going to be a bit spoilery of me to say, but I don't care. This is going to be a spoiler-filled review because I'm feeling a bit ranty. Blink Twice is basically like the female version of Get Out, except not as well executed. And I say that as someone who isn't even the biggest fan of Get Out. It's my least favorite of Jordan Peele's movies. But this movie reminded me of that thematically. And once it became evident that that was what was going on, and I went into this movie not having watched any of the trailers. I knew what had been the previous name of the film, so that was a little bit of a clue. But I didn't watch any trailers. I didn't read the synopsis. I knew it had something to do with an island. Channing Tatum was in it. That was the extent of my knowledge of this film. I will start off with some pros, and one of those is that it was a bit more of an enjoyable viewing experience than The Crow, which I had seen the night before. That's not saying much though, because The Crow was not very good. I rated The Crow 1 star out of 5, and this movie I'm rating it 2 stars out of 5, and it gets an extra star because it was a little bit more entertaining. It's clear to me that Zoe Kravitz, she's the director, and she also was one of the writers of the film. She and another person wrote the story. It's clear she has some promise as a director, and that was evident in the way certain scenes played out. Also, the sound design was fairly impressive, pretty well done. The little hints of unease going on as far as, this island and the strange, weird sort of situation that's happening on the island. Also, another pro was Channing Tatum. I felt like he was decent in here, his acting talent. He showed some solid range as a performer, that he's quite versatile. And so that was definitely something that stuck out to me. Also, Adria, I keep forgetting her first name, Adria Arjona. I had previously seen her in Hitman earlier this year. She was good in here. She's pretty talented as an actor. The main actress, I don't remember her name. She was okay. I wasn't super blown away by her performance. I don't feel like she has a lot of charisma to carry a movie like this. She doesn't have a lot of screen presence to carry a movie like this convincingly and entertainingly. So, she was all right. She was definitely better than the chick who played in The Crow. I'm really ragging on The Crow still. That's kind of the extent of the pros for me. And here we're going to get into the spoilery stuff, which is where I'll also talk about the premise. The main character, I cannot even remember her name now. That's how not memorable she was. She and her good friend encounter this rich, tech billionaire type of guy, whatever. He's apparently previously gotten canceled or whatever. He's done something, abuse of power or some such. And yet she's quite fascinated by him. The main character, she's fascinated by him. And so when she and her friend end up encountering him and he invites them to his private island, Jeffrey Epstein, anyone? He invites them to his private island. The girls jump at this opportunity. They're kind of starstruck, and he's got a whole bunch of other people he's invited to the island. And so they go ahead and join this group of people. They eventually find out that none of the people really even knew each other. These other girls that are tagging along, they didn't even really know these guys that they were joining, even though it had seemed like they had been friends. They were pals, whatever, very friendly with each other. They hadn't really. Adria was some sort of previous reality star, survivor type star, and I can't remember the other two girls are just these, I don't know, kind of not very memorable girls. And a good portion of this film is taken up with them partying on the island, having a great time, swimming in the pool, eating nice dinners, and getting high on some type of drug that they're being given. This goes on for a good bit of their time there on the island, but the main character starts to notice things are a little bit off. The help on the island act a little strange. There's this, I think she's a Latina, looks like a cleaning lady. She's doing weird stuff with snakes, and she just doesn't quite know what's going on, but she's just picking up on the fact that things aren't quite right. That's my dog, by the way, starting to reverse sneeze. She's okay. Also, the main character starts to notice that there's dirt marks under her fingernails. She doesn't know how that happened. There was a stain on her dress that the next morning when she woke up, it was completely gone. She didn't know how that happened. There's a lot of references to her fingernails, and she has a scar on her face, and that kind of comes up as sort of part of the story. Eventually, what happens is her friend gets bitten by one of the snakes on the island. They mention how these snakes have to be killed because they're a pest or whatever. Well, one of them bites her friend, and then after that, her friend starts to feel really nervous about what's going on. She definitely has a very strong idea that things are not right at all, but she just can't quite put her finger on it. She just doesn't feel comfortable. And then her friend disappears. She's just gone. And the main character kind of forgets about her for a little bit, and then she remembers, hey, where's my friend? And the other girls don't even remember her friend. And so then eventually what happens is, I'm not only going into the premise, but I'm basically touching on all of the spoilers that are pertinent to my rant about this movie. So bear with me. Basically, what they find out is that these guys that have joined the group of people, there's like Channing Tatum, Christian Slater, who is underutilized. Gina Davis is in here too, and she's very underutilized. But these other guys, Haley Joel Osment is also in here, and a couple of other guys. I can't even remember their names. Basically, these guys are drugging these women. And by the way, there's a trigger warning at the beginning of the movie, which I didn't read because I figured reading it would give spoilers, and I really wanted to go into this as unaware of the story as possible. I think that's lame to put a trigger warning. I just can't with that. But anyway, they have been drugging these women and have been doing terrible things to them at night. The appeal, I guess, which I don't really get because they're all very chummy with each other. These women would have been really quick to like, okay, let's go mess around. I guess the appeal is having these women at their mercy. And then the next morning, the women not remembering anything because there's like this drug that they're given that basically wipes their memory of trauma. This comes up later where Channing Tatum, at some point he goes on this little ranty spiel about how you can never really forgive when someone has done something bad and terrible, but forgetting would be great. That's what this drug does to these women that they regularly have brought to their island. They're always taking pictures of them. They give them this drug so then they never remember anything that has happened during the course of their stay on the island. Murders end up happening. The friend of the main character, she gets killed. Then the girls realize that if they drink this snake venom, it starts to make them remember what's happened, because when the friend got bit by a snake, that was why she started to feel even more uneasy about the place. So they drink this snake venom, it wakes them up. It takes some of them a bit longer than others to wake up for whatever reason. And from that point on, the women, at least Adria Arjona and the main character, they have to pretend like they're still unaware of what's going on, and their acting in this particular part of the movie is not convincing at all. A blind person would be able to tell that these chicks are totally faking their enjoyment and happiness of being at the island. So that was kind of cringe. I mean, it was done to sort of, amp up the tension because, these girls know what's happening to them, but the guys don't know that the girls know. So that's like, okay, what are they going to do to get out of this situation? Their cell phones had been taken from them from the very beginning. What's going to happen? And it ends up being this big brawl, and there's killings that happen, and all the guys get killed except for Channing Tatum and Adria Arjona and the main character. And then in the end, the main character has saved Channing Tatum because she has this plan. She had given him some of this stuff to make him forget. one of the things that had been used on these girls to make them forget was this perfume that they used every day. She had slipped some of that into his vape or whatever. And so he started to forget why his friends were severely injured around him. Why was he getting ready to slit this girl's throat? He didn't remember that. So basically, in the end, she has married him and has taken over control of his tech company. And he doesn't remember all these bad things that he's done. Now, one of the reasons I had a problem with the ending of that is supposed to be this, haha, look what she did. Isn't she so smart? One of the reasons I had an issue with this is, how would she know how to successfully take control of this big, huge global tech company if he's little more than just this doddering idiot that doesn't remember much of anything? Because this drug that she gave him and she regularly gives him, you realize that at the end of the movie. So it has made him forget these bad things. But this drug that was given to the girls was specifically made to have them forget the trauma that had happened to them. Well, if he's not traumatized by what he's doing to these girls, why would he forget? Why would it work on him? If this drug is supposed to selectively target trauma, if it's not supposed to selectively target trauma and it's just a complete, you're going to forget stuff, then how would he even know how to assist her in running his company? Because she sure as heck has no background or anything that could put her in this situation and have her still be running this company successfully like a year later or however much time has passed from the moment that she gets off the island with him till the end of the movie when it's revealed what she's done. So that didn't really land well for me. I was just like, I don't know about this. Additionally, the characters in here, most of the characters are fairly unlikable and forgettable. Adria Arjona stands out, but she's not necessarily one of the more likable characters. The main character, she's she's okay. Her friend is okay, but there's no one really here that has any sort of significant magnetism that makes you latch onto them as a character that you can really bond with and pull for. Like I just didn't. The main character was a bit too smitten and silly when it came to this strange guy. She never met him before, and all of a sudden she's willing to run off to this island with him. And he'd been in trouble publicly for bad behavior, and she's just running off to this island with him. A bunch of strangers. I was just like, what? Okay, so there was that. And then getting around to me referring to this as the female version of Get Out. The whole narrative of these rich, heterosexual white men treating these women, who not all of them were white, okay, the optics of that obviously is very intentional, perpetuating certain narratives that continue to just cause like this angstiness and division, I feel, between certain groups of people. But it was very heavy-handed with its narrative, and it didn't really land well with me because it was like this big, huge, hitting you over the head with this message. Look at how bad these men are. Men are terrible. And women, they need to support each other instead of fighting against each other more often. They're just like... I thought the mystery of this island was going to be a little bit more interesting, and instead it really wasn't to me. By the time the women found out what was going on and then all this stuff was happening, there was all this chaos that was going on, people running around attacking each other, and it felt very clunky. The third act of the movie, it just didn't flow right, and especially the interaction with Gina Davis's character. She came across as like the equivalent of the Samuel L. Jackson character in Django Unchained, that time. So it was like, but she wasn't really fleshed out very well. She was just kind of there on the periphery, and she'd show up every now and again, and then it was just not a very entertaining film as a whole, even though, yes, it was a little better than The Crow, but not by much. Out of all 3 movies that I've seen within the past 7 days at the movie theater, well, 8 days now, Alien Romulus, The Crow, and Blink Twice, I feel like I've struck out because I haven't been super crazy about any of these films. So I'm hoping that the next film I'm going to go see, which is Strange Darling or Darlings, I'm hoping that that will at least be a little bit better constructed than these last 3 films were. I did forget to mention something in my review, and it was about the psychiatrist played by Kyle MacLachlan. When he's first introduced, the main character makes some sort of comment to him about blink twice if I'm in danger, something along those lines, which is where the title of the movie comes from. He appears to blink twice, which kind of made me think that perhaps he was going to prove to be an important character of assistance at some point later on. And no, when everything is revealed, he's kind of in on it too, sort of observing this phenomenon of these women having their traumatic memories completely obliterated, and he finds that fascinating and everything. So that part about him blinking twice made absolutely no sense at all, because if he had no feeling of sympathy or remorse for what was happening to these women, he wouldn't even care about giving any sort of warning. That also didn't even mesh very well as far as the overall storyline and everything that was going on. It just another example of something very clunkily executed, or just the payoff not being there like you are led to believe that it will be. Basically, the fundamental message here is white, straight, rich men, bad. Ethnically diverse women, victims. I'm not the biggest fan of that sort of ham-fisted narrative. Okay, back to the video. So this felt really more like a spoilery discussion with insertions of the problems that I had with the way this film went, as opposed to a typical type of review that I do. But I decided that I just didn't care if I was going to get spoilery, because I've about had it with films that end up not hitting the mark with me. It's frustrating when I take time out of my day to go to the theater, and I love that I have Regal Unlimited, that's great, but it's frustrating when I take time out of my day to go to the theater and I can't walk away from that with a feeling of satisfaction at having had a great viewing experience. So I'm kind of letting my aggravation show a little bit with this review. But yeah, that's about all I have for this. If you guys get a chance to check this out, I'm curious to find out how it lands with you. It does have more solid reviews than The Crow, both audience and critics. So curious to see how this lands with everybody else. All right, you guys. Adios.